I am so excited to announce that I have partnered with Magimix for season 9 of the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. Magimix is a family-owned business that has the amazing reputation as makers of quality kitchen appliances that are adored by chefs and home cooks alike. I remember growing up and always seeing my mum's beloved Magimix on her countertop and the utter ease of how she used it. With their 30-year motor guarantee, these machines have always been built to last. They continue to be relevant as ever in the busy kitchen and make fantastic food processors that make your food go further and reduce food wastage. They are a godsend when it comes to batch cooking and using up leftovers. I use my Magimix every day. If you're ready to step into the world of Magimix with a new food processor, blender, ice cream maker, or any other bit of kit, then simply pop over to their website and use my exclusive code at checkout for a 15% discount. The code is MMCSF9. Don't forget to download the Magimix app, which is full of recipes, tips, and tricks. Make it with Magimix. Hi, and welcome to the Crazy Sexy Food podcast. I'm Hannah Harley-Young. This show is all about the love of food and how it plays a part in our lives. I sit down with well-known personalities, food experts, chefs, and people who, well, just love their food, to find out all about their life, career, and their favourite tastes along the way. It's a huge pleasure for me to introduce Nancy Silverton to the podcast. Since fangirling over her on the Netflix series Chef's Table to frequenting her brilliant London outpost, Pizzeria Mozza, Nancy is a force to be reckoned with. There is certainly a positive relationship to carbs when thinking about this James Beard Foundation winner. She brought artisanal bread and baking to the LA food scene through founding Brea Bakery, has written 9 books, co-owns Michelin-starred Osteria Mozza amongst several other restaurants. And after a career which spans over 4 decades, she is showing no signs of stopping. The queen of bread, the sandwich-making maestro, the pizzaiola extraordinaire. Is there anything this woman can't do? I'm about to find out. Nancy, welcome to Crazy Sexy Food.
Wow, what an introduction. And it sounds so much better with a British accent, I'll tell you.
I'll just be employed to just
yes.
sort of intro you at every opportunity.
Hired.
I love that. How are you? You have literally flown in today for this. Obviously.
I did. I flew in. I unpacked. I went over to Pizzeria Mozza, did a quick tasting of some of the dishes, and here I am.
How are you feeling? You all right?
Yeah, I am all right. You know, I travel so much that I just sort of look at my watch when I land, and whatever time it is where I am, that's what I do. So if it's time to go to bed, I go to sleep. If it's time for breakfast, I go to breakfast. And I feel that that's what works, you know?
Absolutely. Well, that's like seasoned traveler like way of thinking.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah. So tell me, I must ask, since you have just got off a plane, did you eat on the plane?
I ate nuts.
Okay.
And that is what I love to eat on the plane.
Okay.
You know, I used to eat on the plane just to sort of pass the time. It was like one of those things like, why not? But the last couple years, I've kind of stopped eating plain food and just gone straight for those nuts that come before the drinks. And then I take a quick nap and then I get up and start my reading.
Okay, good for you. So do you like plain food?
No.
Yeah, okay. I was hoping you were going to say that.
No, but you know, every once in a while you get a big surprise.
Yeah, every now and again. I mean, I have a big issue with plain food.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd think after all this time, they could just, you know, make a bit more of an effort with it. I know Heston Blumenthal
or
did
less
something
of an
with
effort.
it.
You know, like when they try to come up with sort of a fancy concoction and treat it like restaurant food.
Yeah.
Then it's reheated. It's not going to be good. So maybe they should start knowing they're in an airplane and there's their limitations and kind of work backwards rather than trying to write a menu and make food to fit that menu.
Absolutely. What do you think, in your opinion, is the secret to great bread?
Well, you know, like everything in cooking, there aren't any secrets. So let's just move on from that. No, but people pretend there are. They try to either mystify what they're doing, or in all cooking, or some cooks try to hold on to these proprietary recipes so nobody can make them, and therefore they feel secure in what they're doing. But I feel like there really aren't any secrets, which they're not. So bread, what does it take to make a good loaf of bread? First of all, you've had to have a good loaf of bread. And I think that actually applies to almost all my food. Once you have a great salad, you know what makes a great salad. So for me, the great loaf or the great slice of bread I had was back in 1979 when I went to France to go to pastry school. And it was there that I had my first slice of poêlée bread. And it was also there when I thought, I get it. Now I know what bread is supposed to taste like. And so, once you set that bar, and you know in your head, and you know in your mouth, and you know in your heart what it's supposed to taste like, it's just a matter of getting there.
Yeah. What is your favorite loaf of bread?
I mean, what style?
Yeah. What's your, what do you love? What do you go for usually?
I would say for the most part, and it's not, I don't know do you know what a Parker House roll is?
No.
Or a classic kind of dinner roll. It's an American soft bun.
Okay.
And it's, soft, and it's made with white flour, and it's a quickly made bread. It's not baked in a, with any kind of crustiness involved. And you slather on a lot of sweet butter, and it kind of melts into it, and it's really delicious. So I like that as well. But if you had to say, what is my favorite? It would definitely be a crusty loaf. It would definitely be a loaf that had integrity, meaning that it was a loaf that was not quickly made, one that is a slow rise, most likely due to it rising using a starter rather than commercial yeast or 100% commercial yeast. I do like mixed grains in it, but I like a loaf with flavor and structure and character.
Ooh, the way you talk about bread, it's sort of like I'm getting all excited and like, I love it. It's like describing a person in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
These are the characteristics I look for in someone.
Tall, dark, and handsome,
literally.
right?
I want to know what life was like growing up. Who was cooking? What was on the table? Paint the picture for us.
You got it. So I grew up, I was born in 1954. But I don't know if I say I grew up in the 50s or I grew up in the 60s. Probably the 60s, because probably in 1955 I wasn't eating much food. So I'll say I grew up in the 60s. And in America, the 60s was the beginning of convenient foods. It was the beginning of a lot of women, a lot of housewives, because it was usually the women that cooked in the kitchen in those days, decided that they didn't want to spend time in the kitchen anymore, and they wanted to get food on the table as quickly as possible. So most people were using items that were maybe not a household word here, but were, again, when I was growing up, things like hamburger helper, where you would open a box and add a whole lot of things to your ground meat, and then you had a meal. But it was the hamburger helper, it was called. There were things like rice-a-roni, which was rice dishes that, again, came out of a package, and you just added water and all the seasonings were there. Well, that was not the way my mother led her household. My mother was not a person of
convenience.
Convenience. My mother loved to cook, and I hated her food. So I wanted my mother to be like all the neighborhood mothers and the mothers of my friends that were getting this great food that they opened out of a box, and it had all of the preservatives that made people sort of crave them, just the way fast food is. Fast food is not nutritional food, but there's certain flavors in unnutritional food that people start to crave, right? So I didn't like my mother's cooking. I used to beg her to be like other mothers, right? And she sort of refused. She was an early advocate of nutritional eating, or nutritious eating. So she would only buy whole grain bread. I hated it.
Yeah.
She wouldn't cut the crusts off. She wouldn't peel my fruit because the vitamins are in the skin.
She was
and
ahead of
on
her
and on and
time.
on. She was way ahead of her time.
Yeah.
She wouldn't use plastic. And so she would either she would just throw my food at the bottom of my lunch sack. And my lunch sack, by the way, was a recycled giant grocery bag rather than the beautiful colored. It sounds like I'm really ratting on my mother. My friends got beautiful pastel colored lunch bags, that they would buy just for lunch. And my mother was, nope, too wasteful. I have to use the recycled grocery bag, So eating to me was not pleasurable. I had no interest in food. And I never would have thought that I would have later on in life developed and maintained the passion I have to the way food is grown, to the way food is prepared, and the way we sit down at a table and eat together.
It's fascinating because I obviously sit down and speak to a lot of chefs, and most of their life stories sort of falls into that. Yeah, I was sort of like 14, 15 and I just, decided to go and work in a kitchen or go to culinary school or whatever. And it just, that's their journey. I love the fact that actually for you, there was really not that love until...
No, but I see so many people that I know that are in cooking and they'll sort of credit to, if it's not their direct parent, and again, usually the mother, then it was certainly the grandparents, But I didn't have that feeling growing up at all.
So can you describe any key dishes that do remind you of your childhood?
Well, I know the dishes that my mother really loved to cook. And later in life, I've sort of paid attention to those. Like my mother loved making brisket. And she loved the smell, and she loved just the process of making it and setting it on the table. And that was, it always put a big smile on her face. So I always think of her and her brisket. She loved roast chicken. She loved leg of lamb. She loved beef bourguignon.
Oh, okay.
But eating, one thing that is interesting, and I have to say, and I appreciated it then, and I appreciate it so much looking back, that even though I didn't like the food that she cooked, because again, I wanted the hamburger helper, what I did like is that every night, the family of four, because I'm one of two, my sister, and my parents, we would sit down every single night at the table and have dinner. And I learned so much at that table. And that is a part of life that, again, I don't know how it is here in
I was raised in a very similar way. And it was very important.
It's dying everyone's too busy. People have too many schedules and no families eat together anymore. Yeah. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It really is sad.
I think the most important conversations happen at that dinner time meal.
Yep.
You've had, whether you've had a good day or a bad day, everything comes together in that moment.
Yep. And I learned
really
about
important.
Books and I learned about politics and I learned about, my dad's day at court and what my mother was writing. And, it was just a really wonderful evening. And it was every evening at 6:30, we sat down together. So that importance of the table, I think, is one thing that was always with me. It was the food part that came later in life.
And then sort of fast forwarding a bit, you go to university, you study or you major in political science. And then when I was doing my research on you, you had an epiphany during your time and you had this calling to become a chef. Can you explain this?
Yeah, so I entered college because one needed to put down a major. I didn't know what. My parents were really political, so I thought, okay, I'll study political science. I don't know. So that's how I got into university. But right early on, the first week, the second week, I don't know, I was in my college dormitory dining room and there was really the most attractive man I had ever seen. My heart just really was pounding. And I found out he cooked in the dormitory kitchen as a supplementary job to going to school. So I think he got his dorm free or something like that. Anyway, I thought, well, I gotta meet this guy. So I went up to him and I told him that I really love to cook and I would love to cook in the dormitory kitchen as well. It was a new position. There was the first year this that there was a dormitory at this campus. And so obviously the first year that there was a food service there. And so he hadn't hired anybody, and he hired me right away, and I started cooking there. And I loved it. So the epiphany was that a few weeks into making meals for the students, I realized I love to cook. And I realized this is what I want to do when I grow up, which, to find your calling in life
But
is
so did you
special.
actually know how to cook at that point, though?
No, I bought a cookbook.
Okay.
So the cooking program that this gorgeous man was in charge of was the vegetarian meals for the college dormitory. So I bought my first cookbook. It was called Cooking Creatively with Natural Foods. I still have it, by the
Love
way.
that.
And I just started cooking out of the cookbook. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't intimidated. But what I really realized, it was twofold. I just loved working with my hands. I just love that tactile relationship between the hands and the ingredients. And the other thing I loved is serving the food and just the feedback that I would get from people and how much
It's a beautiful feeling.
I loved hearing, oh my goodness, that was delicious, I felt like I had really done something special.
What happened to the guy?
The guy I'm still friends with, actually. He's a winemaker.
No way.
Yeah, and he still lives in the same area.
Brilliant.
And he's still really handsome. But he's got a wife, a few kids.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
But
That is brilliant.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, I love
but
that.
I'll tell you, that's where fate comes in. There was something,
Yeah.
right? That drew me to him, that drew me. But I dropped out of college, so I didn't finish my 4 years. I left college in my senior year.
Wow.
I called my parents up and I said, I'm in the library. I'm trying to write a paper. I don't want to write this paper. There's nothing I want to do with a college degree. I want to cook.
What did they say?
My father said, this is where it's very timely. My father said, okay, I understand, but you got to make me a promise. You got to go to the Cordon Bleu.
Wow. Okay.
And I did
And
in
that was
London.
what you did. Yeah.
And it was a year waiting list. I said, all right, I'll go to cooking school. And signed up for the Cordon Bleu, or he signed me up for the Cordon Bleu. And I waited 1 year and a few months. And the Cordon Bleu in those days was on Marylebone High Street. No,
Yeah.
sorry, Marylebone Lane.
Yeah.
Right near where my restaurant is, which is like, wow.
I love those kinds of stories
Right?
where it just goes full circle.
Full circle.
And so, I mean, gosh, so this is what, London in the 70s?
Yeah, 1978. Or 1977.
Okay. A different London.
A different, well, when I think about it, like, I say, wow, I think the food in London is just so exciting and so delicious. And there's so many levels and so many kinds. And I think the young British chefs are just like the best in the world. I really do. I love the food here. And I say, when I went to school here, the food in London was so dreadful. But then I thought maybe I didn't have a budget. Maybe there were some really expensive restaurants that were great. I know the restaurants that I could afford, the food was dreadful.
Yeah. But also, I do think, and listen, I mean, I was born in the 80s, so I don't have an experience of London in the 70s as much as I wish I did. But I do think that it was pretty awful then. Yeah. And I do think that as a city, we were quite late in, if you think about all the top cities, you got your New Yorks, you got LA, you got Paris, you got Rome. We were always sort of right at the back.
Yeah.
Because, the amount of people still that are like, oh, is the food really that good in London? I'm like, where have you been over the past 15 years?
Yeah.
Like, things have changed.
So good.
It is. And as you said, it is exciting. So did you love London? Was it where you wanted to be?
Yes, I did. When I first, there was a little bit of an adjustment, for instance.
I can imagine.
When you go to the Cordon Bleu, they don't arrange housing or anything like that. You're on your own. You've got a start date, and that's really it. So my parents found me a bed and breakfast to stay in, and it was in West Hampstead.
Okay, nice.
But my vision coming from Los Angeles of a bed and breakfast, it was just like, wow, I'm going to go to London, and there's going to be, I'm going to stay in this beautiful home, and I'm going to have a beautiful, sitting room, and this is just, and I got to my little dark little, bed and breakfast place, ran by a really lovely woman. I just loved her, but at first I thought,
what have I done?
Yeah, what have I done?
I can imagine.
And then I remember just being so starving after, taking a long plane and slipping it off. And I was so starving. And I walked down to the tube, and I looked on my choices of where to go. And it's like, oh, Piccadilly Circus. I've heard of that. I'll go there. So go to Piccadilly Circus. I never saw so many people on the street before,
Crazy.
And I walk into a sandwich shop. I'm so hungry. And I'm used to like sandwiches from Los Angeles, deli sandwiches, which are mile high. And it's like, oh, this is going to be good. I am so hungry. And out comes this sandwich like with one little slice of meat. And I just looked at it, and I think I probably cried.
Yeah.
But from then on,
it
was uphill, and it was great. I loved it. I love just the getting around on the tube, things like that. Something so different than, we have no public transportation in Los Angeles. But I loved walking, and I loved everything about London, and I have always loved everything about London. So it's great
we
to
love
be.
You, Nancy.
It's so great to have a reason to come here, though.
Absolutely, and we're going to come to that in a second. You eventually, obviously, moved back to America.
Yes,
and as I mentioned in the intro, you are known for sort of bringing this artisanal bread scene to LA. At that time, what was there in terms of bakeries or bread in LA or even in America?
No, America.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, so, bread didn't, except for like what I was explaining to you at the beginning, these soft sort of dinner rolls.
Yeah.
There wasn't a big bread culture at all in, Los Angeles. Delis or Jewish delis had their rye breads. Probably there were a few other sorts of breads, but it wasn't a bread culture, I should say. I think what you mainly found was sliced sandwich breads, in the grocery store. And there certainly weren't bakeries except for really Jewish bakeries, and a few smattering of French bakeries. So when myself and my then husband decided to open a restaurant, I wanted to make sure that we had good bread to go along with it. So that was really why I got into it. It wasn't for any other reason than trying to really round out the total experience at the restaurant.
And how did you discover, I guess if you want to call it like a signature process? I mean, I can imagine there was a lot of trial and error.
A lot. Because, in those days, I mean, it's very different now. Now you go to a well-stocked bookstore, and there are so many bread books to choose from. I think that in the world, there's no excuse to make bad bread anymore because there's too many resources. Although it wasn't thousands of years ago, we're only talking my bakery opened in 1989. So we're talking, let's say, mid-80s, around when you were born, let's say. There really weren't the books, and there weren't the bakers to talk to. So I, again, had what I thought was the ultimate bread, which probably is still one of the ultimate breads, which is the poilâne loaf in Paris. So I had that as a bar. And I, kind of heard sort of little bits and pieces here and there on how to do that process. And so it was literally for a few months, complete trial and error, a tablespoon of this and a teaspoon of this and a pound of that, And then halfway through my sort of self-teachings, I enrolled back at the pastry school, Lenote, that I had gone to for pastry, and took a 5-day bread class. And that kind of helped to jumpstart the process.
Okay.
a bit.
Yeah. And the bakery that you just mentioned, for anyone that won't know, was the La Brea Bakery.
Yes.
And which was and is considered an institution. You subsequently sold the business, but it does still run today, if I'm correct in thinking.
Yeah, it runs in one of the sort of systems that I had developed right before I sold it. And that's why I sold it, because that's what was sellable, which was the process of baking the bread 80%, freezing it, and then it being baked the last bit either at home or on a commercial level, like at a supermarket or a restaurant could bake it themselves.
And
it's called a par-baked bread.
Why do you think that that's a better way of, I guess, selling bread or to a consumer, for example? Because it's just they're finishing it off, so to speak.
Because it's fresher.
And
and the other reason is that it also is a great option for those people that live in, say, a small town that doesn't necessarily have a bakery or a bakery that makes that style of bread. So it's not the loaf of bread to take home if you live in New York City or Los Angeles or San Francisco, because there's so many options of great local bakeries. It's geared more towards the person that doesn't have a bakery in their own backyard, or food service, right?
Yeah.
And supermarkets.
Yeah. When I think of bread, and I hope that everyone who's listening, when they think of bread, I think of the ultimate meal of all time, which is a sandwich. And I think a sandwich is the most comforting, most beautiful meal you could have. It's one of those things that obviously you can have it out, but it's something about making a sandwich at home and sitting down with this beautiful glory in front of you. And you do have a book that is the sandwich book. What, in your opinion, is the art to making a good sandwich?
That's a good question. And, I kind of look at sandwiches the way that I look at pasta.
Yes.
And the reason why I do is that a poorly prepared pasta or a poorly made sandwich is one where you just clean out the refrigerator and everything ends up in that, and that's like
a
the worst.
Raid,
yeah, and that's the worst kind of pasta too. I mean, sometimes it could be fun, and actually sometimes it works. But for the most part, I think it has to be well curated, and that's what I tried to do in my sandwich book, both open-faced and closed-faced, from the really simple grilled Gruyere sandwich, which I think is one of the best sandwiches. And you know what place I just love when I come here is at the cheese toasty place in the Borough Market. That is so delicious.
Oh my gosh, I know,
do you know what
you're
I'm talking about?
Yeah, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think he does it with a couple different kinds of cheese. And so
it's
you have
an explosion.
Yeah,
it's
and
beautiful.
Leeks, and it's so delicious.
It's on the little path. I've forgotten his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about. What is your favorite sandwich filling?
But now this might not sound delicious to you, but I love super, super simple sandwiches.
Okay.
And so, I mean, there's so many that I really love, but one that I just love is the simplest, which is a really crusty baguette, spread with butter.
Oh, olive oil.
And prosciutto.
Okay.
But you know what it's not a sandwich. Let's just talk about bread. And okay, this is for you because you love olive oil, right?
Yes.
So, one of our most popular things, we'll call it, at the Osteria, and we also serve it at the Pizzeria in London here, is called a fattunta. And a fattunta, sometimes things sound better in another language because it's Italian.
Okay.
And the slang of it is sliced and greasy. Right?
Oh, I love
How does
both
that
of
sound?
those things. Yes.
So the way you make fattunta, and by the way, fattunta is really just the ultimate garlic bread. So it's a very thick slice of a crusty bread that's toasted. So you could either toast it in a toaster, as long as your toaster is wide enough to accommodate thick, or in the oven, or a sandwich press, or on a grill. Point is, you've got to get the outside toasty and crunchy. And then as soon as it comes out, you rub it very aggressively on both sides with a fresh clove of garlic. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Then this is what you have to do. You have to literally drown it in olive oil in a really
all over.
good quality extra virgin olive oil. And when you think that you've added enough, add a few more glugs, and then finish it with some delicious flaky sea salt. And that is the most ultimate piece of
this is what I'm saying. The simplicity.
Sandwich.
That's what you're saying. Like sometimes it is so simple.
Yeah.
I'm salivating thinking about that.
Fatunta.
Heaven. It's interesting that we talk about sandwiches because before recording, you were quite shocked about my admission that I don't eat butter and I've never had butter in a sandwich, to my knowing. But I grew up very similar background actually to you in the sense I had a mother who was quite ahead of her time in the cooking and everything was, homemade at home. There was never any fast food and we were sort of encouraged to eat things. But I had a real issue with school lunches.
Yeah.
So in the UK, I'm sure it's the same in America. You either have an option that you can bring your own lunch or you are given lunch at school. And we were given lunch at school and I couldn't get on board with it. It just was unacceptable. And so my mum would sneak in sandwiches into my backpack. And we used to call them these gourmet sandwiches because the other girls that were sneaking in sandwiches were getting what you described when you first came to London, a little bit of plastic ham and some cheese. And my mother was sort of getting ciabatta breads drizzled with olive oil. And then I'd get gorgonzola one day with ham. And we used to have these old school desks that were wooden and you'd lift them up. So when it came to lunchtime, I'd open up this desk and this waft of whatever was coming out. And all of my friends would be like, Hannah, what the hell is in your desk? And I was known as the girl with the gourmet sandwiches. So it's a very important part of my upbringing. I think sandwiches are beautiful.
And you know what else I love? I love egg salad sandwiches.
That's
what my mother used to make me, egg salad sandwiches.
Yes. Do you know what I love? And I know this is I don't know how you're going to feel about this because if you don't like too complicated, I love a good club sandwich.
Oh, yeah. But see, it's perfect.
I can't find a good one in London still. I really cannot find a good one.
Do you like it with 3 slices of bread? That's how they usually do them in the hotels. I quite like it
as a traditional in triangles.
Yeah, exactly.
With some chips in the middle.
Yeah. But see, that's the perfect thing to order when you travel and you go to a hotel. Yes. You look at the, in dining, I'll have the club sandwich,
it's always the thing you order is room service.
Yes, of course.
I love that. So another thing that you have beautifully put your hands to is pizzas, which is another huge topic for me because that I would probably say, along with a cacio e pepe pasta, pizzas are probably my favorite thing in the entire world. And your London spot that I did mention, Pizzeria Mozza, has some incredible pizzas, and I know because I have been several times. And that is something you're quite known for. It is the dough and particularly the crust of your pizzas. For people that have not yet been, first of all, why haven't you been? But secondly, talk to me about that crust because I haven't had a pizza like what I had at your place.
Well, I think firstly, the mistake that people make when it comes to pizza, and they've been doing it for years, is the first thing they want to say is, what style of pizza do you make? And I'm talking about being in America. Yeah. So your choice is, it's Chicago style, or it's New York style, or it's Detroit style, or then in the last, number of years, it's become Neapolitan style. And what I always say is, it's my pizza, my style. And I think it's from the eyes of a bread maker. And so I approach the dough. And let me say the really important thing about a sandwich and a pizza is that one part of that entity is not more important than the other. So meaning that for so long, people either paid attention to the topping and the crust could be anything, or the opposite, a lot of attention into whatever it was, the crust, and then throw a bunch of stuff in. And that's like a sandwich. The bread is really important, and what's in between is really important, and that's the only way it's successful. So I like to say that it's my style of pizza. I do say that it is in the style of a bread maker. So there was a lot of things that I was looking for in the crust that I wanted to see that I also want to see in my bread. So that is like an open texture. It's not a cracker, thin crust, things like that. But I think the combinations of what go on top are equally important. There's certain things that I've had in my life, that first slice of poêle bread. And by the way, when I had that first slice of poêle bread back in 1979 when I went to Paris, I put in my filing cabinet that we all store in our heads. One day I need to figure out how to make a loaf of a bread that tastes like this. So I always knew I wanted to do that. I just didn't have the opportunity. So there's a pizza maker in United States. His name is Chris Bianco, and he has a pizzeria in Arizona. He now has one in L.A., and I think he's getting much bigger.
Did he open in L.A.?
Yes, he opened in L.A.
Oh.
Actually, for the second time. The first he was part of another restaurant, and he had a pizza component in it that close, but he just reopened the end of last year. The first time I ever tasted his pizza, probably in early 2000, something like that, maybe late 1990s. I put in that filing cabinet in my head, I'm going to teach myself how to make pizza one day. Again, never had the opportunity to really delve into what it takes to really master something. But when I was looking for this location for this Italian restaurant that I was going to open, meaning Pizzeria Mozza, which did open, the building that I found had two components, a pizzeria and then a large space for the other restaurant that I wanted to open. Anyway, I was forced into learning how to make pizza, and same thing.
What a tough job.
Well, it was. I had a lot of pizza I had to eat, and a lot of failures. But again, that opportunity. I knew I wanted to do it for several years, and I was given the opportunity to do it.
Well, I can tell you that you definitely succeeded. So, and that's coming from, I'd like to call myself a pizza connoisseur. Oh. So there we go. What is your favorite pizza topping?
That too can be super, super simple. It can be just a really good crushed tomato sauce, right? On a really great piece of dough that's finished with just some wild oregano. Super simple, but delicious. I don't need a whole lot of toppings.
What shouldn't be on a pizza?
What shouldn't be? Okay, barbecued chicken. But you laughed. You know that there was a chain.
I mean, I know a few brands who do that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't frequent those places.
No. Okay,
I'm sure you can think of what I'm probably
there was a chain. It became a chain.
Yeah.
It was all over the United States. I think it was called California Pizza Kitchen.
Okay.
And they were best known for their barbecue chicken pizza. And it was
God. How do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
Well, that's funny because I have one on my menu.
Know you do.
Okay, so people, and it's funny, there was an Italian in the other night, and they were very complimentary about everything. But then they had to say, okay, now, you ready for a little honesty? And they said, we never tried it, but why could you ever possibly put pineapple on a pizza? No self-respecting Italian would ever do that. And it was sort of my answer to my middle son. His name was Ben. And when the few times that I would take my kids out for pizza, because I was kind of like my mom. I didn't really like fast food restaurants and things like that. So I didn't really take them to pizza growing up. But the few times that I did, he would always order the Hawaiian pizza, and I would be like horrified, right? So I decided I needed to make a pizza with pineapple that maybe I would like as well. So first of all, it's not canned pineapple. It's thinly sliced fresh pineapple.
I think that's the problem for me. It's the canned pineapple that everyone uses.
Thinly sliced. It has jalapeno peppers on top, so you get the spice, very thinly sliced rings of that. And then it's topped with, rather than slimy, I think they used to do it like with something they called Canadian bacon that wasn't even smoked or anything. I use a nice speck, a smoked, prosciutto or smoked leg ham. And it actually works, and people do love it. I can't say I eat it, but it's one that I could eat if
I like the honesty. I mean, I got to be honest. For me, I'm just not a pineapple on pizza kind of gal. But I think it's what you've said. I think the canned pineapple is just quite an unacceptable topping.
Right.
If we're doing the sort of the sliced pineapple, so we're getting fresh pineapple in there, it's a different sweetness.
Yeah, you get the sweet and spicy and smoky.
I can get on board with that.
It's like 3 elements in there that make it a little bit better. Which
actually all work quite nicely together. So when you did open in London, you joined forces with Treehouse London. What was the reception like? I mean, what are Londoners like when it comes to pizza? You know, America, we know how much the Americans love pizza, but, you know, was it quite a different reception, or was it?
You know, it wasn't. I think that in today's world, people are pretty open to the different styles. Like, they're not so surprised. So it wasn't like, what are you doing? This is not pizza.
Yeah.
And some people still say that when they come into my pizzeria in Los Angeles. You know, they'll say, this is not pizza. I grew up with pizza in New York. It's like, I'm not trying to make New York, you know. So, I mean, the reception has been really great.
Fantastic. One other thing that you actually do at Pizzeria Mozza, the meatballs are quite profound, I must say. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, really good. And also, I don't know what... I would never have normally ordered this. I think we had a vegetarian at the table because there was quite a few of us recently. And you have, I'm going to say this now in public, the best fried cauliflower bites I think I've ever had in my entire life. I would happily go vegan if I knew I was eating those every single day. I don't know what you do to them.
So it's tossed in a spicy tempura kind of mixture, and I mean rice flour and carbonated water, you know. But the part that wouldn't be vegan is that it has that delicious spicy mayo on the
I know.
side.
Yeah, I poured that practically into my mouth. But anyway, do you cook much at home?
You know what? I don't cook much at home, and I don't cook because I have these restaurants that I eat at. But my children don't live with me. They're grown. They're out of the house, right? When they lived with, you know, when they were there, I cooked more. And when I did cook and I just always hate to just bring up like the pandemic, you know, I don't know.
That's all right. I mean, it's part of history now.
So there was a few years in there where I was at home every night, and I actually did cook. But I'll tell you where I cook. I have a little house. This is to make you jealous. I have a little house in Umbria.
And I'm coming.
And you're welcome to come. And I've had it for over 20 years now in a tiny little hilltop village. And there I cook, and I cook every day, and I invite people over, and I love it. I get up early in the morning, and I make my list, and I go to the market, and I come home, and I start to prepare the things, and I get to cross them off my list. And as each dish comes out of the oven, I set it on this. I have got a big fireplace that has a nice ledge, you know, and I get to see the fruits of my labor one by one. And I cook there the way I want to eat, which is room temperature food and sort of communal style. So everything's on platters.
Yeah. And again, sort of comes back to that idea of sitting around the table, right, with family or friends and that conversation. That's what I actually do love about communal eating. I think the Americans call it sort of like family style, right? Which literally does what it says on the tin. Right. You know, you sit around as a family and you're picking and you're passing, and I love all of that.
Yep, love it.
That house was featured in the chef's table.
Oh, yes, it was. I remember that.
Right? Because when you said it, I was like, no, I do know about that.
Yes, it was the last day of shooting. I'll never forget that. And wow, when that day was over, I was like, okay, I'm done. It was like 10 days. 10 full days of shooting, 10 hours a day.
That must have been quite an amazing experience, though, for you.
You know what? It actually was. I wasn't going to do it. I just felt like I just don't really have any. First of all, I didn't even know what Chef's Table was when they approached me. So I watched a couple episodes and I'm like, oh, wow, these people really have a story. I don't even have a story. You know, they said, don't worry about it. We find your story. I still haven't seen them, by the way. So
you still haven't watched the episode?
No, because I can't hear my voice. I can't see my face on camera. You get so critical.
You've got to watch it. No. It's great. There's some lovely food in there.
Good. And I made it all. And there's no food stylist. But that last day, it was just like, you guys got to get out of my house. I'm done with you. Yeah.
Oh, God, you know, you've got to watch it. You come across great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I say this years later.
Yeah, right.
Is there any food you dislike?
I don't like processed food.
Yeah.
I don't like food that it's overly manipulated. Mm-hmm. I like food that looks like what it was, you know?
Yeah.
I like strong flavors, but I like really simple food, and I like to know where my food comes from. Mm-hmm. And I like to know, one of my worst kind of restaurant menus or restaurants is when I feel the food is just so confused. When you're in a confused restaurant, and
it makes you confused. It's just
right.
Yeah.
And do you know who Massimo Bottura is?
Yes, I do.
So for those that don't, he has a restaurant in Modena in Italy. It's called Osteria Francescana, and it's certainly thought of as one of the finest restaurants in the world, right? And he is wonderful, and he's a friend. And he was in a restaurant. I have, amongst the handful of restaurants I have in LA, one of them is called the Barish. It's in the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. It's an iconic hotel. It was the first hotel. First Academy Awards was held in that hotel. Anyway,
was it?
Yeah,
I didn't know
in
that.
1920 or whenever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I have a restaurant there, and it's the only restaurant in all the restaurants that I have, and a few around the world, in Singapore and in Mexico and things like that, that is not an Osteria Mozza or a Pizzeria Mozza or my third restaurant, Chi Spacca. And it really is the brains of the chef that's running it. So what the compliment I'm about to say, I'm not complimenting myself. I'm really giving full credit to the chef. So Massimo was in 2 nights ago. And when he was done with the meal, he brought the chef over and he said, I want to tell you, this is so rare, but what I love about your food is you don't let your ego get in the way of your flavors. And I thought that was such a meaningful and such a well said compliment, because what I find today with so many young chefs is they're so eager and they have so many confused ideas, and they don't know how to edit and how to filter it, that their food tastes confused, and their ego does get in the way of their cooking.
Yeah. I feel very similar to you, and actually, you focus on Italian food, but this is why I say this is why Italian food is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Because it's not confusing. It's not complicated.
I mean, it
doesn't need to be anyway.
Yeah, no, but earlier you said cacio e pepe is your favorite dish, right? And you know how many ingredients are in cacio e pepe?
Yeah.
Like 3. Yeah. There's the noodle, there's pasta water, pecorino, and pepper.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that is if not my favorite dish of all time.
Right. And the other thing that I love about something like cacio e pepe, something that has 4 ingredients, or what I love about fettunta, which has 3 ingredients. No, it has salt, so it has 4 ingredients also. Is that you can't hide behind any of your mistakes or the quality or the lack of quality in the ingredient. That pasta, that noodle has to be a good noodle. That cheese has to be a good cheese. There's nothing to hide.
Literally, this is exactly how I feel. It's funny because when I told you also before recording, I made this spaghetti carbonara, and I'm so not that person that blows their own trumpet when it comes to my food. I think I'm a good cook, but I'm also still learning. But I went out and I went to the best delicatessen in London because I was like, if I'm going to do this, we're doing this right.
Yep.
I'm not going to go and buy pecorino from the supermarket that's been sitting there for 3 months. We're going to go spend money, And in my head, I'm like, I just can't believe I spent £20 on this cheese.
Right.
But you know what? It bloody well made that dish.
Yeah, it does. It makes the difference.
And that's why I love Italian food. I love Mexican food because it's ingredient led.
Yeah.
And I love what you said is that nothing can hide.
Yeah.
Nothing gets hidden.
No.
That's it. So there we go. Look at us putting the world to rights. I love it. What 3 items are always in your fridge?
Butter.
Oh, God.
Always. French butter, by the way.
We were doing so well.
I know. And then we got to the butter. I always have condiments that don't spoil.
Okay.
So they're important because if they do, then I will be constantly throwing things away. I mean, so things as simple as anchovies and capers, something that you can whip up. Something, a dish really quickly. Anchovies, capers. I love chili crunch. That's so delicious and spicy.
Oh,
I
know
love, I always have eggs.
Yeah.
So those do have some sort of a shelf life, but
Yeah.
so I always have whole milk for my cappuccino.
Yeah, we didn't have any proper milk for Nancy. She did come into a non-dairy
But when
milk
you invite me
household.
over again, I'll bring my own milk.
No,
Now I
will
know.
have everything
You will?
waiting for
Oh,
you. I
okay.
might even make you carbonara and
Okay.
see what you think of it. Let me do a few more runs and then we'll do it. Aside from your own, where are some of your favorite restaurants to go to?
So I love my friend Sally Clark.
Oh,
And, we worked together in 1979 at Michael's Restaurant in Santa Monica. That's where we met.
No way.
She is a brilliant cook. I love everything she does, her sensibility, just her respect for food. But at Michael's, she was the front of the house.
So I was raised on Sally Clark's food.
Really?
Because my mum is quite an incredible cook, and she had one of the first sort of delis that you could go to.
Yep.
And, I'd be eating things like little cheddar crackers.
Yeah.
And again, similar to you, I was wanting all the crisps and the naughty stuff. And mum was coming home with all these like homemade, they were delicious, but yeah, I love Sally Clark.
I love Sally Clark. I love River Cafe, of course.
Yes, around the corner from me.
I love Brat.
Yes.
I love Lyle's.
Yes.
I love Hoppers.
Yes.
I love Giaconi's.
Oh,
I just love.
Yeah. Okay.
I love St. John.
Yeah.
I love Rochelle's Canteen.
Yeah.
I could just go on and on.
Okay.
And on
You're naming all the good places.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in Los Angeles, and so much of what I love is I love female cooks. So like in Los Angeles, I love Suzanne Goen. She has AOC.
Oh, yeah.
2 AOCs now. She used to have Luke. She's fantastic. She has a place called Caldo Verde now downtown. I love Suzanne Tract. She has a restaurant called Jar, which is really fantastic. I love, the night before I left, I went to Connie and Ted's, which is run by Michael Cimarusti. It's his sort of New England fish restaurant that's really, really terrific.
Okay.
I love Susan and Mary Sue Milliken and Susan Feniger. They have Border Grill. That's a great restaurant.
I'm scribbling all of these down. I cannot, oh my God, amazing. I love it. And this is what I'm saying. It's like there's such a beautiful variety of restaurants out there. We're so spoiled these days, actually.
Yeah.
There's no excuse to not eat well.
Right.
Right? So there we go. Are you a starter or a dessert person?
Oh, if I was when I am in a kitchen, and I mean a commercial kitchen, my comfort zone is 100% the pastry department, even though I do it all. That's where I pick up a rolling pin and I feel like it's an extension of my arm, But as far as eating, I would have to say definitely savory. I crave salt more than I crave sugar.
Yeah. I feel like you and I were like destined to meet at some point. Before I get to my final questions, which is my little quick fire section, you have put your hand to some brilliant initiatives that I'm really keen to sort of hear about, such as No Kid Hungry program.
Right.
Can you explain what the organization does?
Well, first let me say that I, feel fortunate that I'm a part of a workforce, meaning restaurants and the institution of restaurants, that really have the ability to raise a lot of money for a lot of worthwhile charities. And that's my way of giving back. So I don't have to necessarily make monetary contributions to certain charities that I really believe in, but I'm able to, say, cook for them or be a part of a food festival that brings in thousands and thousands of dollars. And so it's very important for me to do as many of those charitable functions as possible. So sometimes it's a food festival, sometimes it's a private dinner at my house. I sell dinners at my house in Italy that people pay lots of money, and I cook for them in Italy. Things that go to everywhere from No Kid Hungry, which is an organization that is nutritionally, or it's a nutritional organization that brings school lunches to underprivileged students and schools. And for so many people, that is their only meal of the day, is now that breakfast component and the lunch, component. So that's what No Kid Hungry. It's that their mission is to provide food that otherwise so many of these kids would spend their days in school being starving. But another charity that I'm very involved in is called Alex's Lemonade, and it is honoring a little girl. Her name was Alex, who died very young and several years ago. She had a very rare form of childhood cancer, and while she was trying to fight her cancer, she started holding lemonade stands in front of her house to raise money to give to the hospital that was trying to treat her.
Wow.
And now there's a couple chefs in a few cities around United States that have this big food festival where they'll invite like 50 chefs from around the country, and we all make small bites. And that's one that I do. I'm
so
very
lovely.
involved with the LA Food Bank. I try to raise money for some of the women's shelters in Los Angeles. So it's not just one. And then there's, every other charity that's, the American Cancer Society. I mean, there's so many great charities. And like I was trying to say, luckily, I'm in a field that can do something that brings dollars into these charities.
Well,
and it's important.
Well, I was going to say
It's a big
it
part.
is important, because as much as it's all great sort of, sitting here and talking about all the wonderful food in the world, there are people out there who simply do not have the means of accessing it for various reasons. And it's initiatives like these ones that you've mentioned that, we all need to really support and put our hand to. I always finish with a few quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Yep. Let's
Okay.
think.
What is the craziest food you've ever eaten?
Craziest food. Now, say what? Let's see. What's crazy though? Like, are brains crazy?
Yes.
I've eaten brains. How about that? But
I mean,
I'm
they're
not
crazy
sure.
to me.
Oh, they are. Yeah. Wow. What?
Where did you eat brains?
But that's a classic French. I know.
I don't eat butter.
But
so
I know.
brains,
Yeah.
you're pushing me over the edge.
But I'm just trying to think, because certain things, I don't like food that wiggles and shakes, and I don't like food that's alive. A lot of people will eat like a fish that's still swimming, and they swallow it. So
do you eat oysters?
I love oysters.
Okay.
How about? But that's not crazy.
No,
Might be
I
crazy
know,
to some people, because some people don't like oysters. What? I'm just trying to think.
I'm quite happy with the brain answer, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Brains. How about
there
that?
we go. Done.
Okay.
Accepted.
But they're delicious.
What has been your most memorable meal?
One of them was a meal that I actually wrote about for a book that was on that subject of a memorable meal. And this delicious meal that I cooked that had all my friends that were in this small town at the same time in the summer. We were all there. And as most people left, and there was just a handful of us around the table, and one of the people that was there was a drummer, and he started playing the bottles with various amounts of wine that was left. So each one was a different sound.
Oh, wow.
And he started just kind of randomly playing these bottles, and it developed into not karaoke, but that kind of feeling of, everybody was singing, and it was really just such a special evening, and one that you can't replicate. It's
totally.
Like, let's have the bottle evening. It's that's not going to happen.
No. I love those sorts.
So it was very spontaneous, but good.
My favorite snack of all time is actually sitting behind me right now. I don't know if you've heard of this. These are pickled onion Monster Munch, which is, I know she's looking at me.
I like pickles.
Pickled onion Monster Munch.
I love the name. Wow.
They are a very famous British, we call them crisps, you guys call them chips, but they're actually made of corn. They're like puffed little fingers. I like monster hands.
How long have they been around?
I would assume probably before I was born.
Wow.
I would say
never seen them.
I should know that answer, but I'm going to say like mid-80s. That's my sort of answer for that. That's my favorite snack of all time. I love crisps. What is your favorite flavor of crisps or chips for our American listeners?
I think it would be something like vinegar.
Okay, fine. Like a salt and vinegar.
Yeah, salt and vinegar.
Is there a particular brand that you like?
Well, I don't think there's that many brands that do salt. Kettle chips is the only one I know. Do you?
We have quite a lot over here.
You do?
Yeah.
Because you think of malt, vinegar,
Yeah.
and chips,
Yeah.
and fish and chips.
America, funnily enough, because again, I'm quite a connoisseur on the old crisps, have only in recent years started doing salt
Yeah.
and vinegar.
Yeah.
We have, I mean, I can't tell you how many salt and vinegars we have over here. Like we could do a tasting. But okay, I accept your answer. As long as it wasn't a prawn cocktail, we're happy.
Oh, no.
Good. What food sums up happiness for you?
Crusty bread
I knew it.
and French butter, French salted butter. I could just really eat a lot of it.
Okay, final question. Live to eat or eat to live?
Oh, I live to eat.
Of course you do.
I never think of, there are people that
Yeah.
think of that. I just have to eat another meal just to survive. But
I mean,
no.
I personally
I
don't
live to
have
eat.
those people in my
Yeah.
life, but I
Yeah.
have had a lot of guests who have actually given that answer for various reasons. They're at different stages in their life. But
Nope, I live to eat.
Yeah, good for you. Nancy, this has been the greatest pleasure. You are such a wonderful human being.
And you're a wonderful interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Now just get over that butter issue and
And we can get
you'll
on
be
with
perfect.
this. I'm 99% there.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much. Welcome back to London.
Thank
I hope
you.
you have an amazing trip, and hopefully I will see you back in LA at some point, or I will see you because I've invited myself to Umbria.
Yes.
We'll do the butter
yeah.
with the crusty bread.
Yeah, but there I do have more olive oil.
Okay, fine.
I do.
All right. Well, wherever it is,
Yeah.
I hope that our
Okay.
paths do cross again.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have fun.
Until next time.
Thank you for listening. If you love what you hear, please subscribe and review. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Crazy Sexy Food and check out the Crazy Sexy Food YouTube channel. Until next time, bye.